If we want to have our dogs come back to us when called every single time without fail, we have to understand something that I call the scales of motivation. When you understand the scales of motivation, you will A, understand why you may have been struggling with recall with your dog, and B, more importantly, how you'll be able to achieve perfect recall with your dog moving forward. It is really simple. Our dogs are motivated by many things, and when we take them out into the great outdoors, there are lots of things to catch their attention. We are one of them. But there are also going to be other dogs, other sights, other smells, other sounds that are going to capture their attention. And it is incredibly simple. In that moment when we want our dog to come back to us, we are on one side of the scale, and our dogs are going to be somewhat motivated to come back to us. The problem is, competing motivators are going to be everything else, and they're on the other side of the scale. Which one wins is whichever one your dog is most motivated by in that moment. If the dog is more motivated by the squirrel running off in the distance than motivated by you, you are going to lose that equation. It's simple maths, and they're going to ignore you and chase the squirrel. If, however, to your dog you are more interesting to them than that dog playing on the other side of the field, when you ask them to come back, you are going to win that equation and the dog will come back to you. So the question is, how do we tip the scales of motivation into our favor to be able to achieve perfect recall every single time? And to do this, I break it into three main categories. The first one is that we have to increase our motivation levels. Now, the good thing is there are tons of different games that we can play with our dog, ranging from silly games to very formal obedience training when it comes to recall. But all of these things are designed to achieve two things. First of all, for our dog to understand what our recall actually means. So when they hear the whistle or hear our recall command, they know, oh, what they want is for me to come back to them. But then after that, it's making the act of coming back to us as rewarding and as valuable as possible, so that our motivation levels are always as high as possible. Now, all dogs are motivated by different things. That comes down to their breed histories, what they were bred for, and some part of their genetics. Take a Labrador, for example. They will come back to have a tennis ball much more so than they might come back to have a snooze. My English Mastiff Eileen will come back to me if that means I'm going to let her curl up and have a sleep, but if I ask her to come back to me to chase a tennis ball, she's not going to be very motivated by it. So we have to understand what our dog is naturally motivated by and tap into those things. And there are loads of different fun ways that we can do that to boost our motivation level. But then that takes us on to step two, which can be slightly more complicated than step one, and that is to decrease the motivation level of everything else. One of the best ways that you can do that is by socializing our dogs. Oftentimes our dogs are highly motivated by things that they've not experienced before. But if they've experienced them plenty of times and realised that actually it's not that interesting, naturally that decreases the motivation of the thing that they're interested by. It's one of the reasons that we advocate for socialising dogs, especially young puppies, as thoroughly as possible, because it desensitizes all of these competing motivators while simultaneously increasing our motivation level. Now, before we dive into the third step, there are lots to this, and each one of these 3 points we can go into a lot more detail in. And to help you do that, I've created a completely free course. It's called my Rapid Recall course. It's free of charge. If you want to learn more about these concepts and how you can achieve perfect recall, after this video there'll be a link in the description box below and you can go and check it out. But the third piece of the puzzle is helping our dogs learn something that we call impulse control. Impulse control is an incredibly powerful thing, whether it's dogs or humans. Delaying gratification, having the ability to really want to do something, but controlling that impulse and staying focused on the task at hand instead. If we can increase the motivation for ourselves, decrease the dog's motivation for everything else, and teach them impulse control, that even if those scales might not quite be in our favor and they really want to chase that squirrel, but they can control that impulse, you are going to stack the deck in your favor to allow you to achieve the perfect recall that you need if you want to let your dog off lead in the future. So increase your motivation, decrease the motivation of everything else, and teach your dog good impulse control, and that is the formula for perfect recall. And if you want to learn more about it, Rapid Recall course is completely free of charge. Link in the description box below. Can't wait to see you there.